Today on the Coach of Why podcast, we have a very special guest today. He is no stranger to helping athletes find their success on the mat. While at Menlo College, he helped coach 12 All-Americans and 2 national champions for the Oaks. After that, he went to Arizona Christian University as the program's first head coach, and he helped 6 wrestlers qualify for the NAIA National Championships, as well as helped guide that team to find their very first All-American while there. He's now currently at Southeastern University, where he's led this team to a 36-11 dual record, 18 All-Americans, 4 national finalists, and 2 national champions. Today, we welcome Coach Travis Patrick to the Coaches Why podcast. With the world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Kason Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coaches Why podcast.
That's a great question.
That was my Coaches Why.
Welcome back to another Coach Why podcast. We have a very special guest in the building today, Coach Travis Patrick from Southeastern University. He's the head wrestling coach out there. Coach, how you doing today?
Man, doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. I really appreciate you jumping on today and dealing with the delay a little bit, but I definitely am appreciative of that. And just like everything else, I would love to kind of start and talk a little bit about you, right? So why don't you let us know kind of where you grew up and when you got involved in maybe all sports, but particularly in the sport of wrestling, and how that, transpired for you whenever you started.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Washington State. So, now being in Florida, I'm about as far away in the continental United States as I can get from where I grew up. And my parents were still out there and a few of my siblings. But, I got into wrestling second grade. So okay. My dad had wrestled a couple years in high school, but nothing too much. Hadn't continued on past that, but he just kind of knew the values and the discipline that it instilled. And so put me and my older brother in it when I was in second grade. And he was in third grade. And, it kind of took off from there. So I'd been, I did the youth soccer and the youth baseball and all those kind of things. But,
right.
I think from an early age, wrestling is kind of the one that I was most connected to and just felt the most at home with. So just wrestled all the way up through. And then in high school, started playing, I played football a little bit, and then I kind of turned my focus just by the end of my sophomore year was just on wrestling and was doing that year round and involved in club and freestyle Greco scene and traveling around a little bit more. So
yeah. So whenever you were did you have a chance to wrestle at the next level?
Yeah. So I finished runner-up my senior year of high school, and then from there I went to small school out in Nebraska my first year out of college or out of high school.
Okay.
Wrestled at Concordia University in Nebraska.
Oh, yep.
Just wasn't a great fit for where I was at and right then at that point, so I transferred back closer to home. Went to Southern Oregon University. Historically a great program there, and they're still doing a great job to this day. And so was there, finished out my career and wrestled for my first year, and then redshirted. And I was growing a little bit, moved up a couple weights, and then finished out my career there at Southern Oregon.
I got you. Okay, so and you have talked about. I guess we kind of talked a little bit off air, right? Like you've seen a few different. As a coach, well, actually, I'll save that for later. I want to ask that question whenever we get to the coaching side about the differences that you've seen, right, being at different areas of the country. But I guess we can talk a little bit about your recruiting process. So, when you were in high school and, you were starting to realize, okay, like maybe I can't compete at the next level. What was it about it? Was it a particular match you went to? Was it a national event you went and wrestled at and did well at? Was it just getting letters? I mean, what was your recruiting process like? And, when did you realize that you could compete at that next level?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I said, I always loved wrestling. And I think, I grew up in a pretty small town. And so, I think maybe I would have had those goals a little earlier on, but I didn't really have that exposure to it. I grew up in, before really the flow stuff had taken off, and there was really the matches you could watch everywhere. So, my parents encouraged me to kind of whatever I wanted to do, and I was passionate about wrestling. So they really, made it happen for me and allowed me to travel the things I needed to travel, and they sacrificed a lot there. But I think probably my sophomore year, kind of the same time that I stopped playing football and I stopped doing some of the other sports and started focusing on wrestling, was when I started thinking about wrestling in college. I'd gone to a couple camps, summer camps at Oregon State. They're about 2-3 hours south of us, and so that kind of exposed me to it a little bit more. And I remember going, me and some friends from high school drove down, and when Cale was still coaching at Iowa State, they dueled Oregon State, and so we went down there and watched that duel, and got a chance to take a picture with Cale afterwards and all that stuff, and he kind of talked to our team, and so I think that was like the kind of got me excited about the prospect of it, and kind of looking at okay, let's start looking at some colleges and see what I could do. And so probably end of my junior year, started getting recruited a little bit and started talking to some coaches, and I think I pigeonholed myself a little bit. I kind of had for me a vision of what I wanted to do, and I wanted to go to a Christian school. I wanted it to be, so I kind of limited myself, I think, a little bit on some of the schools I was looking at, because I was looking more at the Christian universities, which wasn't a bad thing. But I think that's one of the things, I went to Concordia, and it's a Christian school. But I kind of realized soon after that, just going to a Christian school, and a lot of those schools are Christian in name only. And that's no knock on that school, but there's still like, if you are committed to your faith, and I think it caused me to grow a lot in my faith, and I realized that, you can go to a Christian school, you can go to a liberal arts school or a public school, and if you're committed to your faith, you're going to find the right people and put yourself around the right people. So I didn't feel, I think after my first year, I realized, okay, I got some more options here. I can go look at some different things and be a little closer to home, and there's some really good programs where I can maybe develop a little bit more, and I can still be committed to my faith and my values.
Right. I like that you look back at it now, and you kind of you can kind of agree that you might have put yourself in a little bit of a rabbit hole. And I think that, even though that was kind of your main focus, right, or maybe like a relatively important piece of your recruiting process, I feel like that's something that kids, maybe it's gotten a little bit better, but the whole D1 or bust, or maybe like they have their idea of something, they kind of keep their mind shut down, or maybe not shut, but it's a little bit closed, right? Is a piece that maybe withholds some kids from getting to that next level, or maybe finding another area that they want to go to. Not trying to mention to you, but I feel like as coaches and or as specifically in high school coaches, right, doing our job and doing our due diligence of kind of educating, right, of kids to get to that next level, whether it's just keeping their options open, or helping that athlete understand, hey, if this school's reaching out to you, these are some of the things that they offer, instead of just expecting the youth kid to understand that. So I guess my question for you off of that is, did that Concordia coach or any of the coaches, when they reached out to you, did they do a good job, do you think, of talking to you about what you could expect there, whether it is from the curriculum, or maybe like you said, because it was a 4-year I wouldn't say Christian school, but Bible school, something of that nature, right? That's a direct of that. Do you think that you got a relatively good job of that explanation before committing there, or maybe from them or anybody else?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of coaches that are going to kind of paint the picture, and I mean that's part of the recruiting process. They're painting the vision of kind of what they want you to see, and so I think I was the first one of my siblings to go to college, and the first one of my family to kind of be recruited. So you kind of don't know what you don't know, and some of those things, like you don't know what questions to ask when you haven't been through the process. So I think that's helped me a lot as a coach too, kind of going through that and going. I don't think I made. I think it was a good choice, and it allowed me to develop and have a good experience as a freshman who just found out it wasn't the right fit for me. So one of the things that I always tell our kids coming in is like, man, figure out what your non-negotiables are, and find the right fit for you holistically as a school. Yeah, you want to come and you want to wrestle in college, and that's why you're here. That's why you're sitting across the desk from me. But, you want to be at a school that you also enjoy when you're not in wrestling season, or hey, God forbid that you have an injury and you're off the mat. Do you like the people you're around? Do you like the campus? Do you like the professors? All those things. So find those things that are non-negotiable for you, and that's going to, help you find the right fit. You don't want to be hey, I'm testing it out for a year, then maybe I'll transfer, right? Transferring the pain in the butt. You want to find a school that you find that you fit, that you enjoy and that can help develop you.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to talk a little, I'm going to make sure we talk a little bit about the whole transfer portal, which I know NAIA doesn't necessarily have that, but I know there's some pieces of the puzzle that you can play with as a coach there, which I'll talk to a little bit later, but I would agree. I think it's important that you do your best to find the right fit first. And I think that goes to helping the coach, right? Long-term, trying to build a culture, which we'll get into. It's hard. You want to do your best to make sure you find a kid who wants to stay 4 years, because it's already hard to build a culture with how it is, right? In general with today's world. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But let me ask, was there ever a coach who made an impact on your life? Or I should say, you can answer however you want, but maybe what coach had the most impact on your life? It could be one or it could be more, right? But yeah, let us know who that was and why that person was so impactful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that every coach that I had, even from the youth level, has left a positive impact, and there were some great guys. I think there's a couple that kind of from as I wrestled in high school and beyond, and even in the coaching, that have made some impacts and helped me develop. I think actually my club coach is Bob Friend at Kelso High School. Made a big impact on me. Like I said, I was from a pretty small town, and so I did my club wrestling the off season at Kelso, which was about 15 minutes away from us, and they had a good club program and a good high school program. So getting in there, once again, started around probably my sophomore year, where I'd start going there in the summers and spend a couple days a week training with them. And for him he invested, he could have been just focused on his guys, but he took time to help develop me and help me develop technically and kind of my mental aspect there too, and went to a couple camps with them, going into my senior year. I think helped me jump some levels. And so when I'd come back for breaks, I'd go into my high school, but I always try to find a day where I'd get over there to Kelso and get in their room and work with their guys. And so we stay connected to this day, and he still runs a great program there. And his son's doing a great job at Air Force. He's wrestling for them. So
nice.
I threw my hat in the ring with recruiting him, but he was a good fit for Air Force. So that didn't work out. But yeah, I mean, he made a big impact on me, and I think a lot of my coaching style too. Just the way he ran his practices and the way that he explained technique, I think had an impact with the way that I run my room now. And then I'd say on the other coaching side, just my first boss when I was out at Menlo College, my first coaching gig there, Joey Martinez, and they're running a great program there, and they're making the move to D2, and learned just a lot from him on the administrative side and the relationship side, and running a program, not just the practice side of wrestling, but putting together a program helped me a ton to get to where I am today.
Right. So it sounds like you've taken a lot of things from Coach Martinez and Coach. It was Kelso, right? It was his Coach Friend by Kelso High School. Yes, Coach Friend from and you've utilized a lot of these things into your coaching philosophy now. So let me ask, what's maybe the number one thing on like the training side of things that you've utilized from learning from them, and then maybe what's one thing on like the social or mental or psychological side that you think that you've ultimately learned the most and able to instill into your athletes?
Yeah, I think just the intent and the focus, of coming into every practice with a plan and with man, what are we trying to get out of this? But just the expectation you're placing on your athletes. It's not it's not an overbearing and a dictator kind of approach, but it's like this is the expectation. This is how, like, if you want to achieve the goals that you've stated when you come into this program, like, this is how you need to do it. And kind of just having some non-negotiables with your program. And like I said, just a focus and an intent. Coach Friend always approached, like, he was intense in the practices. Like, he was just serious about it. Hey, we're here to work. We're here to get better. And then I think learned the flip side a little bit when I got into my college coaching there under Martinez, and I learned from another great coach we had on staff, Anthony Varnell, who was a couple-time national champ that I got to work with. Just a little bit more of the technical approach to it, and a little bit more of the game aspect of wrestling. Being able to learn and be able to wrap kind of both styles in, I think kind of molded me to where I am today. Like, man, I want our practice to be focused, and we have a lot of intent. Absolutely. But then there's the times for the play wrestling and the exploring and understanding everybody's not going to be a cookie cutter wrestler, those kind of things. So I think that's helped me kind of approach the individual aspect of it too, having kind of both sides of that coin. And then what was the second part of your question about mindset and?
Yeah, so what's something that you took from those coaches that you mentioned on like the psychological or like mental side that you feel like you have learned to implement, or maybe that you were taught or whatever that you implement into your athletes now?
Yeah. Man, I think going back into the word just intent and being intentional. Because it's the same thing with relationships. I want to be a highly relational guy. Like I said, I ask a lot out of my guys, and I expect a lot, right? If you're going to be a collegiate athlete, like we're going to do it a certain way, and we're going to do it the right way. But just knowing, hey, you can come talk to me. Let's go. Hey, let's work through stuff. Like I'm not going to try to fit a square peg into a round hole with certain styles and expectations. And knowing, like when I bring these guys in, I want to know what makes them tick. What drives them? What are they motivated by? And then what are they afraid of? I had a good conversation with one of my guys as we're getting close to postseason now, and he was just saying, man, I'm afraid to leave this sport because he's a senior. I'm afraid to leave this sport and not having accomplished anything, not having, made it to the podium or whatever. So we were able to kind of break that down and talk about where his identity is. And that's big.
That's important. Yeah.
Yeah. And just talking about, man, you can't hold on to it so tight. If you're trying, man, and your worth is in how you do at the end of the season, that's all you're gonna be thinking about when you go out. And it's not about wrestling anymore. Like you got into the sport and you love the sport of wrestling. But as soon as you make the outcome your identity, honestly, it's going to hurt your ability to go out there and win. So we're able to break that down. And I think just being able to have those conversations is one of, sometimes it's a hard thing about coaching, but it's one of the best things about it.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, as you mentioned, like you want to be high personable, right? Or highly personal coach. And those conversations are part of it, right? Like that shows your vulnerability or accepting their vulnerability to allow that, conversation to happen, right? So you have to be open to it and let them know that you can be trusted to have that conversation, to where then eventually, right? Like, I guess the idea, which eventually we'll get to the culture side of it, but helps build that. I'll run through a brick wall for my coach because he actually cares about me more than just like how well I do on the mat. So, and
that's one of the things I love about coaching, and I think is part of just feeling called here is like I get to kind of work through. Hey, I didn't do this well when I competed. I think that's one of the things I was telling the kid yesterday. Like I held on to it too tight. I don't think I figured out until probably even a couple years into coaching, like how to separate myself from what I do. And I think that's something that would have helped me a ton in my last couple of years of competing, if I had been able to separate myself a little bit more from the sport and be, a little bit more intentional about approaching it than with just like, hey, I love the sport of wrestling, but my win and my loss doesn't define me. I think towards the end of my career, I was holding on to it too tight in the same way that he was. So we were able to share a moment in that way and kind of share that perspective. And, I want my guys to be able to achieve more than I ever did. But man, have just a blast doing it. Wrestling should be fun. It's a warrior sport. It's hard. It's physical, but we should be able to enjoy it.
So I guess that's a great segue, because I was going to ask you, as you just mentioned, wrestling's tough, right? That's why there's not a lot of people who decide to do it from a young age, or high school, or specifically college. So how do you keep it fun, quote unquote, or maybe not so monotonous? There we go. With as the sport, as we know, it's a full-time job when you get to college, right? Relatively, right? So how do you keep it fun? And then how do you keep those practices, or maybe just the sport of wrestling, not so monotonous day to day?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the group. I think every year's different. Every year you got a puzzle you're trying to put together and kind of see how it looks at the end of the year. So I think it depends. I mean, there's a group when I first got here that we had a lot of older guys that were kind of a little bit burnt out, I guess, on the sport, and had to instill a little bit more play wrestling aspect of it. And, maybe you throw in a couple more games of dodgeball in throughout the training process. And I'd say, it kind of varies from year to year. And this year I feel like we have a little bit different group that we'll play some games from time to time, but a little bit more of a mat rat group. this year
Yeah.
that like, I mean, they just want to wrestle. There's guys that were playing dodgeball and they'll just kind of like, they'll start sparring because they're tired. They'd rather just be wrestling. So
Yeah.
so you kind of go, okay, what is fun for this group? And I think with the group we have right now, I think it's more like clarity and vision is going to keep them motivated. Hey, this is where we're going. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. And so clarity, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish in practice today. And I think that's the group that we have right now. That's my challenge, is to just make sure that we're keeping, hey, this is where we're going. We're not just training to train. Like, this is where, even if you're not one of the guys, if you're one of the red shirts, if you're third on the depth chart, right? What's your vision for the rest of your season is what we've been kind of talking about we got a month left until the conference tournament. And so it's okay. What are you trying to accomplish? If you're a senior on your way out, what's the legacy that you're leaving? If you're somebody that's trying to win a national title, okay, what are we doing in our training? What is the extra work you're doing to get there? And hey, if you're a freshman, and you're not in the lineup right now, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? Are we just kind of, trying to waste time till season's over, or are we going to make something out of it? So I think that's the group that we have right now, which is fun. From the wrestling perspective. But yeah, there's points in the season where you got to throw in some dodgeball games, some handball games,
Absolutely.
just to keep it light, so it's not all just grind.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's, I guess, going back a little bit to that personal side, you just have to know your team, right? Like what they're good at, what they're not good at, but that goes to the personal side. So I agree. I love that you are willing to throw in some of them games to keep them keep them maybe keep that competition alive, but away from wrestling. So when did you decide that when did you decide that coaching is what you wanted to do? Was it a person? Was it a time? I mean, when did you decide, all right, I want to coach?
Yeah. I think I knew, because my dad coached me a little bit in middle school, and he always coached, he'd coach football. And so I was around coaches my entire life. And I remember being in, probably elementary school. It might even been before. I think it was before I was even in youth wrestling, going, over winter break when he was coaching middle school, he'd be bringing me to a practice. And so just seeing that, I liked it. I liked being around the sport. So I think even going in, probably sophomore year of college, and my major was going towards teaching. That's what I was going to go. I'm going to go be a high school teacher and coach. And then as I got, I did some internships, and I did some shadowing and all those kind of things. It kind of evolved a little bit, as I feel like it does. You kind of get clarity on, okay, what am I passionate about? And I kind of felt just, man, I don't know if I'm ready to go coach and teach high school. I liked being at the college level. And so then I kind of was going, okay, do I want to try to stick around and coach where I'm at, coach at Southern Oregon? And that was a door that was open. I talked to my coach about it. I was like, hey, I can work on getting my master's in teaching. And so it'd be about 2 years and I could coach there. And then I kind of started thinking about it a little bit more, and I decided that I had a passion for kind of strength and conditioning side. And so started studying for that and got my CSCS and certified there. And so I decided to kind of branch out and get a different look, not directly go into wrestling coaching. And I just like, hey, I'm do some of the sports performance side. And so that's actually what led to me going to Menlo College. They had looked at, I wrestled at Southern Oregon. We wrestled Menlo. And at the time I was in school, we always beat Menlo. And so an opportunity for me to go down, and I was working with the strength and conditioning side, and I was working. And then, so I was going about 50-50. I was coaching wrestling, volunteer coach for wrestling at the time, my first year there. And also doing sports performance. So I was working with men's and women's wrestling in the weight room, and then had a couple other sports I worked with as well. And so that's what I was like, man, I love working with the college athletes, a little bit higher level of motivation, and they're recruited athletes. Absolutely. And so, but then, I realized towards the end of my first year there that there was a couple times where I'd have to leave wrestling practice earlier. I'd have to go late to wrestling practice because I was working with a different team in the weight room. And I realized that, man, when I was in the weight room, I was missing being at wrestling practice. When I was in wrestling practice, I wasn't missing being in the weight room. And fair. So I just felt like, this is where I feel most passionate, planning wrestling practices, and strength and conditioning is still a good tool that is good to be able to have now. and have that background just in training and kind of understanding the physiology. But yeah, I had the opportunity really after my first year to step into a full-time coaching role on staff at Menlo, and still was involved in strength conditioning until the time I left Menlo for Arizona Christian. But yeah, it just felt like that was where God was opening doors for me, was to get into the wrestling coaching side, and I was passionate about it, and had a coach in Joey that took a chance on me to step into that role in my second year.
No, and I love that you used a different tool that you thought you were gonna use that still allowed you to get back to your passion. So, not always, that first initial step is not always the what's the right term? Your thought process of your path isn't always the path to get you where you actually
Right.
want to be, right? Type of thing. So I love that. So you started at Menlo, right? At least on the level of that was your first time, your first full gig, right? Or first full-time job was at Menlo, and then you went to Arizona Christian,
Yep.
and so now, and then from Arizona Christian you got to Southeastern. Is that correct? So
Yes,
that's
sir.
your timeline. So how long have you been kind of like how long were you at each day, or maybe your timeline from first time to now?
So just over 4 years at Menlo.
Okay.
And so, yeah, like I said, I was, kind of half and half with strength conditioning and wrestling my first year, and then um, shifted more to the wrestling side and was full time there, and then moved into the associate head role at Menlo. And so I think going into my fourth year there, I started just kind of looking. I kind of felt like, I want to do this. I want to be a head coach, and talked to my boss about it, and we were just kind of looking at positions, and applied for a couple, and had some interviews at that point and didn't get anything. And so felt like every time, there's one in particular that was kind of close to where I grew up, a little closer at least, and so I felt, okay, this is where God wants me. This is it. And I kind of was in the final interview and didn't get the job. And I felt like those are good times for me to, anytime that happened. And in my life, I feel like I've been able to, okay, let's double down on where God's got me right now and be present. And I feel like every time that happens, like he ends up opening a door in that process. The more present that I am where I am, the more that he opens the door, and the more clear he is in speaking.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Arizona Christian started their program. That would have been, 2019? So January 2019. So, they announced they were starting the program. We were actually running a tournament, and the AD at Menlo, who is, he was the one that started the program back in the day. He walked by and said, "Hey, Arizona Christians, they're starting a program. I think it'd be good for you to apply." Okay, so I applied for it and interviewed, and in December 2018, I found out I got the job, and so, which was hard. It's hard to leave a team that you invested so much because I had to leave mid semester. Or mid-year, you know what I mean? Because I had to get there in January, move down to Arizona, and start recruiting. I couldn't wait till March and high school season be over and all that stuff. So that was hard. That was hard to leave the guys I'd put a lot of time into and built relationships with. But it was exciting for me and my wife to move down there, and made the jump to Arizona. And the challenge of, we didn't have a facility, and we didn't have didn't have anything, and you're starting from scratch, and recruited 30 athletes there that first year. And we had, I think, 2 guys that had ever wrestled in college before, like 28 freshmen and 2 transfers or something, something like that. And so, no full-time assistant, had a great guy that came alongside, but we were both young and figuring it out. And there were some great things that year, and there were some really hard things. And you realize that, you probably brought some guys in that thought they wanted to wrestle in college just because it's a first year program, and then they, didn't really understand what it took. And to top it all off, we had one kid qualify for the national tournament our first year. He ended up, he made it all the way to the blood round. Had a great year, and then COVID hit. And so that was at the end of first year as a head coach. COVID hit, and everybody, like, we literally had the national tournament. We kind of, COVID was a rumor, and kind of say, okay, what's going on with this? And then everybody went on spring break, and in the middle of spring break is when they shut everything down. And the school said, hey, nobody's coming back for the semester. We're all doing distance learning, all this stuff. And so we lost a ton of kids in that process, just because the uncertainty that was COVID. people didn't know if schools were going to stay open. Nobody knew, at that point, people didn't know if the schools were going to reopen in the fall. So some of our out of state kids just said, "Hey, I'm staying home. I don't know what's going on. I'm staying home." So kind of, I think year two, man, we probably had 12 kids return, and so we kind of were starting all the way over and recruited another 20 something kids, and you're dealing with, we couldn't even go into the state of California because all their COVID restrictions. So, we're meeting teams. We met a couple teams in Vegas for a duel we had at a wrestling club, and we're going out to Nebraska 2-3 times a year because the middle of the country could wrestle and nowhere else really could. So it was crazy. It was a different time, but we ended up qualifying 5 guys for the national tournament that year and having our first All-American. So it ended up being a great year for us within kind of the craziness of it. And then at the end of that season, I had built relationships with the coaches here at Southeastern. I knew the guy that had started the program, Javi, who's now at Little Rock as an assistant. I known Brandon, the coach that was here before me. And so Brandon just ended up, they had a great year that year, finished 7th in the country, had 2 national champs. And we talked at the national tournament and just, hey, congrats, just kind of in passing. But, we'd also talked at coaches convention the year before, and then got home and we were on spring break. And then I hear that he stepped down, decided to take a job, and he's still here in Lakeland, took a job outside of wrestling, spend more time with family. And so reached out to him and asked, hey, kind of what's going on. He told me just kind of is what I'm doing. But if you're interested in the job, I'll connect you with the AD. So I was like, hey, I knew Southeastern was a great program, good support, and in a good area. And so got connected with the AD and God moved and here we are going into, we're in the middle of year 4. And it's been some great years and continuing to build out here.
I can tell you that your journey is really cool, on the level that like you didn't, like, I guess referencing the spiritual side of things, right? And the fact that you were trying out of Menlo into Arizona Christian, right? Obviously that's in the name, but by the way, going to Arizona Christian, them opening that program was probably really, really beneficial for the Southwest. Because realistically, there's not a lot. I mean, there's not a lot of college wrestling programs down here.
You got Embry-Riddle out there and Arizona State, and there's not, You got New Mexico Highlands up there,
That's one. We have 3 programs, 4 or whatever, right, in the South, in those 2 states. Obviously, you get to Colorado, you see a lot more, snow, blah, blah, blah. But, we don't have a lot. So, for one, we appreciate that you open that up for the kids down here, opportunity-wise. But obviously, going to Southeastern, right, you walked into a program that had that success or had seen success prior to. So, was that something that you were maybe nervous about on the level of like, oh, I'm walking into a program that, for one, you already knew the coach, but you knew like, oh, these guys just had 2 national champs. They were top 10 in the country, right? That type of thing. Was that ever in your mind of like stepping into, quote unquote, those shoes, or were you pretty confident?
Yeah, I don't remember ever having the reservations like that. I think one of the things coming in here, I knew that we needed a little bit of a culture shift in certain areas, right? There's a lot of really talented wrestlers, but there's some culture changes that need to be made. Right. But one of the things I told the guys in our first meeting is like, hey, it's not a rebuild, it's a continue to build, which is what I believe that we've done. And so, we've been blessed to have some really good years. I mean, we took 3rd the first year I was here and 3rd the next year and took 4th last year. And, we've added another 2 national champs to the list. So no, I mean, I think that I knew I could see the ability that there was to be successful here. And, I was able to bring a handful of guys that I had signed and they were in our signing class at Arizona Christian. We had a really good signing class coming in and took some of those guys with me here. And, they made a big, one of the kids that we'd already signed to Arizona Christian came over. Sal Silva ended up, he won a national title for us 2 years later. And, I think I knew that we could get the right kids in to keep this program going.
Right. No, that obviously plays a big factor. And so, which leads me to a little bit about recruiting. I didn't ask a few coaching, some of the back parts, because I'm ready to dive into this part. Because you mentioned you had a New Mexico kid out there who's one of our 5-timers out here, or from out here, and you were able to pull him over there to Southeastern. So it kind of sounds like you recruit nationally. So I guess my ideal question for you is how are you finding your athletes, and then kind of like what are you looking for when it comes to like the character or what you're seeing on the mat, right? Whatever the case is. So what are you kind of looking for in an athlete, and then how and where are you looking for your athletes?
Yeah. Yeah. The where is everywhere, obviously being in the state of Florida. Yeah. Being in the state of Florida, excuse me. We want to keep, some, as many of the Florida studs home as we can, build some of that local support, but I'm not going to pigeonhole, myself into just saying, man, we just want, we're just focused on Florida. Like, I'm from Washington, my assistant's from Georgia. And so we kind of have, some different connections there that have allowed us to get guys in, but recruiting is all relationships, all relationships. So whether it's, coaches from when I was in high school, or, when I wrestled in college, or people I connected with in Arizona, like continuing to just foster those relationships and do right by people. You build a brand in that way, in the same way that you'd build a brand on social media. Like, just building the relationships is key. And, there's kids that, hey, I recruit and they don't come here, but, we had a good conversation and maybe they end up going somewhere else. And, there's somebody else from their high school a couple years later that, hey, I know so-and-so had some great things to say about this program, and check it out. And, we end up finding them that way. So, a lot more like in the state of Florida, we're beating the streets and heading to tournaments and stuff. I go out to Super 32 every year and have a rostered, 10, 15 guys that we're looking at and that we're making connections with from across the country. And some of it's, Southeastern's a good school. It's a good school. Some really good programs and athletic programs in general are good. And so that encourages kids to reach out because they want to be a part of it. And then it's kind of the weeding out process of looking at, okay, is their GPA where it needs to be? Are they a fit wrestling wise? And then are they a fit character wise? So, for us, like, we're a Christian school. You don't have to be a Christian to attend, but I'll tell all the recruits is like, hey, this is something that you need to be committed to. This is what we're going to do. We have chapel that we attend as a team, and you're going to have classes that you're going to, you go to some Bible classes and things like that. Like, man, it's going to add to your life. And if you're open to it, you open your heart, you open your mind, it's going to change your life. So, but if you're coming in and you say, oh yeah, I can put up with it. I can't tell you the number of kids that's the only conversation. Hey, we're a Christian school, man. Where's that fit in for you? How do you, I guess I'm okay with it. Like, that's not what we're looking for. Like,
right.
You don't have, like I said, you don't have to be a Christian, but man, you need to, this is a part of the program. Like, I don't want people that are complaining because they have this class or that class. And it's like, this is what our program's about. This is who we are. We're going to develop you in your faith as a man, and wrestling. And if you buy into that, like, you're going to come, you're going to change, you're going to develop. So we want guys that are just serious in all of those areas. They're going to give effort in the classroom. They're going to give effort, obviously, on the wrestling mat. I mean, that's got to be the bare minimum, right? That love the sport of wrestling, but they're good citizens in the community as well.
Absolutely.
I love that you have, obviously, I know that's probably a very big, important piece of the conversation at the beginning of your recruiting side of things, but it's one of those things where I could probably say that if I had the opportunity to go to a Christian school out of high school, and I had a little bit more of that, maybe drive from, whether it's the way that it's the school or whatever the case is on the level of, academics, how you say you're going to take classes, things like that. Maybe I think it would have been a little bit different for me, because it took me till about last year to really like, all right, I'm committing to a spiritual being, right, and into the Christian side of things, and it's changed how it's been for me. And obviously, like, I'll gladly admit that, but it took a long time to actually get to that point of like understanding this, right? So it's like it took me time to be open-minded and open that door to it. So the fact that you and your institution are trying to break that wall open or that door open at 17, 18 years old, or transfers, right, maybe 22, 23, whatever.
Right.
And they're willing to dive into it, right? It's going to help them out not only on the mat, hopefully, but also, as you said, better men long-term, which is, no matter how good you do on the mat, like you said, you want good men to leave your program, as good husbands, fathers, whatever. So I love that. So obviously, like, I don't know how old you are, right? And Brandon High School was one of the best histories in high school wrestling for years of duels and all that stuff. So I guess my question for you is, is this is just kind of like an off question, not really anything about recruiting, but like, is Brandon High School still successful? And if they are, do they still produce athletes who can get to the next level?
Sure. I mean, one, in short, yeah, they still produce athletes and get to the next level. They're not at the level that they were when they were the national powerhouse. I think that
Right.
shifted a little bit to, you got Lake Gibson that's here in town in Lakeland, and we have a couple kids that are still actually our first national champ, Andreas Bond, he was at Brandon first, and then he finished his career at Lake Gibson. So a little bit of product of both. But Lake Gibson is kind of the powerhouse in the Lakeland area now. They're sending kids to college every year. We just signed another one of their kids for next year. But then you got South Dade down that Miami area is really strong, and a couple other schools that are really, really strong in the area, Somerset and Tampa Jesuit. And so, but we actually have a Brandon kid, Ty Rodriguez. So he was a placer for them, and he came in. He's redshirting this year at 165, but man, dude is super talented. He's got to clean up some positions and get a little bit more solid in some of the basics. But yeah, I'm excited for his career here. He's going to be really solid for us.
Absolutely. So obviously you were saying that, so with Ty Rodriguez and some of these guys coming in are going to make an impact, in the future for you. So with, as you mentioned earlier, maybe as NAIA doesn't necessarily have like the transfer portal you have to worry about in a sense, right? I know you can still get some kids from NCAA and things like that. But I mean, what is that doing? And maybe what are some of the regulation changes when it comes to like NCAA, whether it's roster cuts or whatever the case is, which you may or may not have felt yet, but where do you think that is either, what have you felt from that, or where do you think you're going to feel from that on the level of maybe roster or, however you want to answer that, but how do you feel that that's going to affect you?
Yeah. I would say, first I'd say that's one of the reasons I love NAI, is because we don't have to deal with some of the junk that the NCAA is passing down, and D2, D3 doesn't feel it the same way as Division I does, but we don't have some of these arbitrary requirements, and NAI is a little bit more about the true student athlete experience, and so they realize that the student athletes are a big part of the student body and just the school environment. So I do enjoy that a lot. Haven't felt too much with the whole NIL and the roster caps and all that stuff yet. But we're very aware of it, and we're kind of keeping our ear to the ground and having the conversations that we need to have with coaches and going, okay, there's the SoCon, right? I mean, it's kind of down here by us, and there's a good amount of Florida boys that are there. And so you're just kind of looking at it and going, all right, who's getting cut, because it's just a reality, and it's a sad reality with where, the NCAA, the position that the NCAA is putting some of these kids in. But yeah, we're looking for the right fit. So we're not just going to be taking anybody that's leaving a Division I school, but there's guys that are a good fit for our program and can step into our lineup and make a positive impact. Like we're going to be watching for those guys and have a home for them if they're having to leave their school. So I do think NAI is getting tougher every year. I think part of it's because we don't have the running clock that Division II has, where, there are guys that maybe they left a Division II or Division I a couple years ago and haven't been in school, and then, they pop up at a school and they're crushing it. But I think it continues to get tougher, and it's just going to get even tougher as some of these kids are leaving Division I. And honestly, some of the kids that should have been at programs like ours from the jump. Like you referenced earlier, kind of the Division I or bust mentality, and that's in every state, right? That you get these kids that just go, okay, I want a state title, I'm going Division I, and you can get on a program, right? But a lot of those kids are walking on or low scholarship, where they could come and they could be an impact guy early on, freshman and sophomore year at an NAI school or a D2 school, and so I think some of those kids are going to be finding their way back to some of the schools that were recruiting them early on. And that's why it's so important to do right by kids, whether they come to your school or not. You're recruiting a kid and they turn you down, say, I'm going somewhere else. Like, always leave it with like, okay, man, hey, wish you the best of luck, but, and if anything changes, would love to have you here. Never burn a bridge, never shut a door with a good kid. And they may find their way back to you after a couple of years.
Right. Similar to how you thought you were going to get into coaching and wrestling, and you went, you never know. The door may not, that stairway may not be the right one right away, but it might come back to it. So I agree. Now you referencing just now, like the D2, I know you're referencing this on like athletic, like recruiting side of things, but like NAIA has obviously, as you mentioned, or as we mentioned, the D1 or bust, right? You're going to find really good competition, really, no matter where you go, right? Like JUCO, their rule changes is probably going to make it even more competitive, but realistically, you're going to find good competition no matter where you go. So on the level of, since you are for one, on a very good staff and a very good program at NAIA, I guess my question is, and I'm trying to figure out how to word this correctly. I don't really know how to word this. I think this is the first time I've asked this question, so I'm trying to figure out how to word it. But like NAIA versus like a D2 or D3 or even like a high level JUCO, right? Or maybe even some like mid-major D1s, like on the competition level, right? Like how do you feel you fare? And this could be maybe particularly towards Southeastern, or it could be like on a scale of NAIA. On a competitive level, if we were to go see a tournament that only had NAIA in D2 or NAIA in JUCO or whatever, how does that fare maybe for people who don't know that you're going to be able to be competitive,
sure,
regardless of where you go?
And obviously, I mean, your top level, your guys wrestling the finals across all levels are going to be studs. I think across the board, D2 and NAIA are very comparable. Most, a lot of the teams that are in D2 or many of them used to be NAI, right? So that's kind of the transition. You don't go from, like, if we were to go NCAA, you don't go D3, you go D2. It's just kind of and D3 is tough as well, and there's a lot of great programs in Wartburg and Augsburg and all those programs, but I'd say depth wise, D2 and NAI are very comparable in that way. And we go and we'll try to, we'll see some D1 competition throughout the year. The year before I got here, Southeastern dueled Citadel and beat them. And so we have not been invited to duel them again. Not for lack of trying. We went to the Citadel Open my second year here, so 2 years ago, and we went to the Citadel Open. We did fairly well and had a number of placers, and there was another D2 team that was there and did really well. And then after that, they decided to make that tournament Division I only. So I'm hopeful that they'll change it back, because I'd love to get in there, and just a good opportunity for our guys to scrap. And I mean, tough wrestling's tough wrestling.
Of course,
So we've gone out to the Reno Tournament Champions before, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Of course, yep.
And that's where, I mean, Grandview, I don't know if you're familiar with Grandview or not, but, they're the number one team in the NAI, have been for many years. So they won the Reno TOC this year in the college division.
Yep.
So, they're at a different level. That's who we're chasing. That's who we're, trying to get after. But yeah, they're doing a great job with their program. But I think that, their program and Life's program and our program and a lot of programs in the NAI show that, hey, you can go, like, find the right fit in school for you. You can find good competition. You can wrestle at a high level at D2, at D3, at NAI, at JUCO, but find the school that you're going to get taken care of, that you're going to get developed and is a good fit for your personality, your lifestyle, all those kind of things. So, yeah, I mean, we got whooped by Grandview in the semis of national duels this year. We ended up finishing third. But man, I think Grandview could hang with a lot of those Division I teams that were at national duels, that weekend. And I think that we could hang. I'd love to throw our team right now that we have up against a lot of the teams in the SoCon and see how it goes.
See what happens.
Yeah.
No, I think I love that. Yeah, Coach Mitchell's done a great job at Grandview over his tenure there, and yeah, I know that they've taken some. Like, I know there was a 4-time state champ from Sunnyside in Arizona that went up there this last year. Gosh dang it, I'm friends with his dad on social media. Gosh.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, he's at West
James.
Liberty now.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah, he's over in D2. He's doing well out there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, I did not know he transferred from there, but I know that was where initially he was going to go, or he went, right? But yeah, like
They got Gabe Gonzalez. I think the Globe is where he was from. I recruited him as well. He was, I think, a 3-timer for them, and he's crushing it, man. He redshirted last year. He's a redshirt freshman right now at 25. He's ranked 3rd in the country, so he's doing a good job for them.
Yeah, no, that sounds killer. Yeah. And so like I think it's so cool to watch these. Like I was laughing when you said the Citadel canceled. They did that, and I'm laughing because we had a reference to that in high school. We went to a tournament in Colorado that was that team ran the tournament for years and years, and we went up there and beat them 2 or 3 in a row, and we got stopped getting invited to it. But I'm sure, but like Division I football, right? Like a team they bring them in, pay them $1 million, and then they get beat, right, or whatever. So it's just one of those things where, like, it's cool. I'm not, but like I guess I can kind of see where Citadel or whoever, right, might experience that again, why they do that. But it's cool whenever you say that you can go and compete against other higher levels, quote unquote. At least on paper, they're higher levels, and you can go compete. So I think that's great for the sport too, right? Like not just for you put it on your resume and it looks bad on theirs, but just for the sport of wrestling shows that you have ability to compete at a level that
for sure
it doesn't matter where you are, So that's awesome. So what are some challenges that you felt like you dealt with going from maybe an assistant coach, or maybe whenever you stepped into Arizona Christian, or maybe you can answer it going to Southeastern, I guess, regardless of how you want to answer it, of maybe the recruiting process or maybe the coaching side of things, right? It could be maybe can be recruiting, can be whatever you want to answer. But on the coach side, what are some challenges that you feel like you maybe weren't ready for, or that you just had to overcome whenever you stepped in there?
Yeah, and I mean, I had this told to me before I took my head job, and I told I had an assistant, Kobe Reyes, that was with me for 4 years, and he's now head women's coach up at Montreat, and he's doing a great job. Yeah. But I told him this, like, man, you're never ready to be a head coach until you're a head coach. Like, it's just right. Like you can learn and you can listen and you can, soak up all the stuff from your boss and mentor, but until you're wearing the hat and sitting in the seat, like, you kind of got to figure it out at that point and making the decision. I think that's the biggest thing that I didn't understand as an assistant. And I don't think, a lot of assistants fully understand till their head job is just, and there's no one else to turn to. Like the decision, like you'll ask, your assistants for their perspective and, hey, what do you think of this? And, you ask for advice like you should, but ultimately it's all on you. Hey, you recruit a kid and you miss on him, like, whether you use your recruit that maybe one that your assistant brought you or whatever it may be, but it's ultimately your decision. Right. It's your decision on where you're traveling and balancing the budget and all those kind of things. And so you just wearing all the hats. You see pieces of it as an assistant. You're probably involved in planning trips and you're probably involved in recruiting and planning practices. But I think being the head guy is just like, okay, like you're wearing all the hats at different times. And some days it's like today's been for me, and you're sitting behind a computer and you have 3 Zoom calls in a row going through rankings and meetings, and you got staff meetings and all that, and you realize, man, I haven't coached wrestling in a couple days or whatever, and then other days, hey, you get to be on the mat for individuals and spending some more time with guys. And so it's just a very dynamic and diverse position to be in. Absolutely. I think that's learning to balance that and kind of the ebb and flow of the season and hey, when to emphasize what is important, and delegating. That's something I'm constantly having to learn and develop. And, I got a first-year assistant. He was our GA, and he's doing a great job. Douglas is doing a great job for me. But for me, I have to learn how to delegate, learn what his strengths are. So not just for myself in my day-to-day, I got to go, okay, what are his strengths? How can I utilize him? And what can I give him to take off my plate so I can do some different things that I need to do?
Yeah, that's something I've apologized to all my coaches whenever when I had the head coach title. I look back and I'm like, I didn't delegate well. Like I thought it was all me, right? And they were just showed up to practice, help me with travel and stuff. But that's something I had to learn, was like, and I'm still learning, and I'm learning under this new administration. Like, hey, it's important, and so I can appreciate that, because that was something I struggle with. So thanks for clarifying that was something that was so important.
It's something, that I'm always going, okay, I need to be a little bit better at this, because I like taking it all, and I like doing everything too, but I got to be able to utilize people and their strengths.
Absolutely, yeah. So how do you build a kind of the final few questions for you? Is how do you build a successful culture on the level of buy-in and mindset?
Yeah. One of the things I really believe, culture is it's not static, it's dynamic. And so when you're not building culture, you're losing culture. And then, the other thing is, what you allow is what you promote. And so, I mean, my word that I said at the beginning of the podcast, and, I continue to say is intent. Like there has to be like intentional in everything that we do. Like the conversations, the words you say, the way that you interact with people matter. And just expectations matter, and being clear with the expectation. And that's something, we talk about is, no one's bigger than the program, myself included. This program will hopefully be around long after I'm gone. And the legacy that I leave and the legacy that these guys leave when after they're gone is the program still going to be around. So what position are we leaving it in? What message are you sending to the freshmen, for the seniors? What message are you sending to them? And just something that we really talk about, and I'll give credit to, Ethan Owen. He was a 2-time All-American for us, and he's an alumni that's he stays around, comes in a couple times a week, and he does some of our kind of mental mindset training. But just talking about, he kind of brought this idea of who are we becoming? It's not just who we are now and, hey, what do we want to accomplish? It's like, man, who are we becoming? And we talk about that a lot, and that's kind of goes into, people talk about, hey, getting 1% better or this or that. And, but just that idea of what kind of person are you voting for, right? We want to become the kind of person that can win a national title. We want to become the kind of person that's going to be a good father and a good husband and a good worker in whatever realm that they are. And so it's like every day and every choice that we make, you're either adding up to get closer to that person or you're getting farther away from it. And that's just the same belief that I have with culture. It's just like, we're either adding up towards a positive culture or we're getting farther away from it. So I think we're headed in a great direction. We're doing a good job. We got a lot of great guys in the program, and they're 18 to 25-year-old kids, and they're going to be knuckleheads and make mistakes, and that's okay. We're here to love them through it and guide them through it. But the expectation has to be the expectation for us. And that's what I think. I'm a big believer, and this is from weight room to classroom to practice room, is like we set the standards and we go from there. That way the standard doesn't care who you are, how many times you've been an All-American, whatever it is, like this is the standard. These are the consequences. You're late for weights. This is what you got. You miss weights. This is what you got. You don't get your study hall hours in. This is what you got. And it's like, there's no excuses. There's no reason why. There's no, this, like, it's just, this is what the expectations are with kind of our showing up and being there. And then we just build off of that.
Yeah. You got to treat your best athlete. You have to give the same consequences to your worst athlete, or rewards to the worst athlete as you do to your best athlete. So, and that's obviously just a small piece of it, but I love that you mentioned that, because that's absolutely huge when it comes to building that. So thank you very much for that description there. So how do you build a successful program on the level of wins, and then how do you sustain it over time?
Yeah. Well, ask me in another 4 years and we'll see how we're doing. But I think, man, it's just continuing to put that on the calendar. Yeah. We'll go 2029. We'll get me back on the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's continuing just to bring the right guys in and focus on developing. It's, man, for us, we got to continue to develop and pour into some of our red shirts right now, because they're going to be the guys next year. As much as, hey, we got to focus on our 12 guys that are getting ready for conference, but continuing to develop and put those guys in positions to be successful as well, because that's the future. And I think, I'm really passionate about building a program and not a team. Teams are year to year, and you kind of get what you got, but programs kind of have expectations, and we're not just bringing in hired guns. We're going to bring in transfers, but man, I really want to develop freshmen and bring them up, and guys that are here for 4 years, and then we'll add. For me, I like to be probably 80-20, maybe 75-25 with freshmen to transfers. I think freshmen really build your culture, and then transfers can add to it. But they're always a little bit more of a risk depending on their background and where they're from. But we've been really blessed to bring in some great guys in the last couple of years, transfers that have added to our program and made an impact. I think as far as just winning, it's just, you always got to be recruiting. You always got to be building relationships and and being able to look at a guy's trajectory and see where he's going. There's kids that are multiple time state champs in high school, and that's as good as they're ever going to get. There's kids that didn't ever make the state finals in high school, but man, they end up being a killer because they started wrestling late, or they just hadn't clicked for them yet, and they get in the college room and things click. So it's hard sometimes to identify some of those things, and I think some programs will get a little transfer happy because of that, and what you're getting with the transfer. But being able to develop some kids, and then like I said, we bring in a few transfers. We brought in a couple guys this year that are making an impact for us, that are doing a good job, and they can help develop some of those freshmen too.
Yeah. So having a good freshman, almost like farm system, right? You have to have a good, or youth system. You have to have that young kids to develop, but you have to have the older kids to come in to assist in both the success, but also maybe some leadership. So I like that. Love that for sure. So I have 2 questions left for you. One's going to be on this one to finish the actual coaching side, and then one's going to be a little bit more fun. I like that last question because it brings some controversy to the coaches who listen. So, cool. But to end this one off is, why do you coach? What's your coach's why?
Yeah. I think I talked about it a little bit early on, but I mean, this is what I feel called to do. I think I love impacting guys and helping them succeed in a sport that they're passionate about. But using that as a vehicle to help them become stronger men and better husbands and fathers down the road. I love the sport of wrestling. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. And so I feel like this is where God's called me, and where I can make an impact for His kingdom, and while getting to do what I love and pursue national championships. So, I mean, it's that I'm at a Christian school, and I think that's great, and I love being able to share my faith during that time. But man, I want to win as well, and that's what I love about Southeastern. And one of the things, like, we can be here and we can pursue national titles, and we can, as we've shown, win national titles individually, and we're still chasing that as a team while building men of character. And that's just such a great blend for me. And like I said earlier, I mean, this is what I believe God's called me to do. But I have so much freedom in doing this and being able to impact lives, because it's not who I am. It's not, my worth is not in this job and in this program. But I get to glorify God in what I do. Absolutely.
Damn, I like that one a lot. Heck yeah. That was a good one. I like that. Hey, thanks for explaining your why. That was a very good one. So thank you very much for that one. If you guys are still listening to this on YouTube, make sure you guys HTB, hit that bell. If you guys are on Spotify, all the audio platforms, make sure you guys leave a review, leave a star, say what you got to say, but whatever you say with your chest, because we want to hear it. Coach, as I said, I got one more question for you.
I'm ready.
What states produces the best high school wrestling
or wrestlers?
Man, you're asking me to pick. You're asking me to pick sides here and get in trouble.
I am. I know. That's why I thought it was great for you, because you're all over. So I'm gonna let you choose your words safely here.
Yeah, I mean, we got tough kids from all over the country. I mean, I'm a West Coast guy and grew up on the West Coast, and Washington, Oregon, California, been wrestling and coaching all those states. So obviously there's some studs there, and California is a one division state, and so if you place that state, you're a stud. And got a lot of respect now for the East Coast being out here and living in Florida. And I think Florida doesn't a lot of times get the respect across the country, because it's just not known for being a wrestling state. There's some studs, there's some hammers here, and we got kids from Ohio, and we've had kids from PA and New Jersey. So, Ohio's been good to us. I got to give Ohio some props, and we've had some All-Americans and a national champ out of that state. And Arizona's I think is a sneaky tough state. You got to go. The PA's got to be one of the top states. I mean, I got to go. If I had to rank, Pennsylvania, California, Iowa are probably kind of in the top three there. So with kids, so I won't give one the crown jewel, but I'll say, we've had some tough kids from all those states. We had a 3-time All-American from Pennsylvania, and we got another guy, tough senior for us from Iowa. It's a 4-time qualifier All-American last year, and some tough kids there too.
Hey, that Ohio recruit's going to listen to this and be like, Coach, what are you talking about?
Right.
But it's all right. But hey, it's all right. I like it because it does bring some conversation, right? I've heard some he had I don't know if I want to say it. Let's just say he had California and he had another state that I never heard somebody say was a top state. So it's interesting. I've heard some crazy states.
I gotta give, I guess, man. Yeah, I'm getting all wishy-washy here, but I mean, hopefully, maybe we'll get some love out of there. But Indiana, I don't know, I didn't mention that too. And we had we had a national finalist from Indiana on our team last year, and we got another freshman coming in that was a national or state finalist in Indiana. So you can't forget about that one either.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. Yeah, and I haven't heard that one yet, so that works. I know the whole Midwest, that whole little region there is tough, right? Obviously, they're all the way east, Cali, right? They all give their love. I have yet to say my state because I'm the host of the show, and I don't want any backlash yet.
Can't be biased. Biased.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever my last show comes up, I'll give all my stuff away. But
hey, keep an eye on Nico Trujillo. You're New Mexico boy, man. He's had a great redshirt year, man. That dude works his butt off. So give him some time and be checking on him. I think he'll be making some noise here pretty soon.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I always try to keep an eye on these New Mexico boys. There's a guy up in Messiah, up in PA, I think right now. Obviously Nico, Bryson Valdez up at UNC. So there's definitely a few people obviously at Adams State. So I definitely keep an eye out for sure. I'm looking forward to him. I always like to see how they transition into the college world. So he's got a good coach and sounds like a really good program he's at. So I'm excited to see how he pans out. So and keep an eye out for these New Mexico boys. Hopefully he's a good what's the right curve, foundation or I guess expectation of what there you go. Good expectation what you get out of New Mexico. And I know you got one there. So, but Coach, I really appreciate it. I know you got to get ready for practice today. So, thank you very much for jumping on here today. With that being said, guys, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.